The gunshot echoed across the canyon just as Samuel Cross finished watering his horse at Devil's Creek. One shot. Clean. Final. The kind that meant someone wasn't getting back up. He should have mounted up and ridden hard toward his ranch. Should have minded his own business like he'd learned to do these past 5 years. But something about the silence that followed, too complete, too heavy, made him tie his reins to a cottonwood and creep toward the ridge. Below, a woman stumbled through the scrub brush, her dress torn and bloodied. She clutched something against her chest, a bundle wrapped in blue cloth that moved with the rhythm of her desperate breathing. Behind her, 3 riders emerged from the rocks, their horses picking their way down the slope with the patience of men who knew their prey had nowhere left to run. Samuel's hand found his colt without thinking. The woman below looked up suddenly, as if sensing his presence, and their eyes met across 50 yards of barren ground. Even from that distance, he could see the terror written across her face, the way she pressed that bundle closer to her body. Please, her voice carried on the desert wind, barely a whisper but somehow reaching him clear as church bells. Please, don't turn me in. She took another step backward, stumbled, nearly fell. The riders were closing the distance now, their leader, a man with a silver badge catching the afternoon sun, raising his hand to signal the others to spread out. Samuel felt the blood drain from his face as the woman turned fully toward him, desperate and pleading. The sun hit her features just right, illuminating a face he'd seen every night in his dreams for 5 long years. A face he'd buried along with everything else from his former life. It was impossible. Sarah McKinnon had died in the fire that consumed the McKinnon ranch. He'd seen the flames himself, had searched through the ashes afterward with her father and brothers. There'd been nothing left to bury, but here she stood alive and running from the law, holding what looked like a child wrapped in her arms. The lead rider spotted Samuel on the ridge and raised his rifle. You there, we're tracking a dangerous fugitive. You seen a woman come through here? Sarah's eyes locked onto his, pleading silently. The years had changed her, made her thinner, more desperate, but those green eyes were unmistakable. She mouthed a single word, please. Samuel's throat went dry. Whatever had happened 5 years ago, whatever lies he'd been told, Sarah McKinnon was very much alive. And now 3 lawmen with guns were asking him to choose between the truth and the woman he'd once loved more than his own life. Haven't seen nobody, Samuel called down to the lawman, his voice steadier than he felt. Been watering my horse for the better part of an hour. The sheriff, a lean man with cold eyes and a marshal's star, studied him carefully. Name's Garrett Finch. This woman killed 2 people in Millbrook yesterday. Burned down the church with a family inside. You sure you ain't seen her? Samuel's stomach clenched. Sarah a killer, the woman who used to tend wounded birds and cry over dead flowers. But the bundle in her arms shifted again, and he caught a glimpse of tiny fingers, heard the softest whimper. I'm sure, he said, climbing down from the ridge with deliberate slowness. But I'll keep an eye out. What's she look like? Behind the rock where Sarah crouched, he could see her pressing her face against the bundle, tears streaming down her cheeks. Whatever she'd done, she had a child with her. A baby. Finch's voice carried the authority of a man used to being obeyed. Red hair, green eyes, about 25. Goes by Sarah Webb now, but her real name's McKinnon. Family of troublemakers from up north. The name hit Samuel like a physical blow. Sarah Webb, she'd married, had a child, built a life somewhere else while he'd spent 5 years mourning a ghost. McKinnon, he repeated carefully. That name sounds familiar. Should. Her father and brothers robbed half the banks between here and Denver before we strung them up. She's following in their footsteps, seems like. Finch spat into the dust. Woman's got a particular taste for burning things down. Samuel forced himself not to look toward the rocks where Sarah hid. The McKinnons, he remembered, were simple ranchers, not outlaws. But then again, he'd thought Sarah was dead. How much of what he'd believed about those days was true? Well, Samuel said, untying his horse. I'll be heading back to my place now. Long day ahead tomorrow. Hold on. One of the other deputies, a young man with nervous eyes, rode closer. That's quite a coincidence, ain't it? A McKinnon sympathizer happening to be the only witness out here. Samuel's hand drifted toward his gun. You calling me a liar, boy? Tommy, shut your mouth, Finch snapped, but his eyes never left Samuel's face. Though he does raise a point, Mr. Cross. Samuel Cross. Something flickered in Finch's expression, recognition maybe, or suspicion. Cross. Now that's interesting. See, I knew a Samuel Cross once. Used to run with the McKinnon gang before they got too bloodthirsty for his taste. Heard he went soft, settled down somewhere to play at being respectable. The desert seemed to hold its breath. Behind the rocks, Sarah's baby gave a small cry that she quickly muffled. The sound cut through Samuel like a blade. Lot of men named Cross in this territory, Samuel said quietly. True enough. Finch's smile was cold as winter, but only one who'd lie to a federal marshal about seeing Sarah McKinnon. The other two deputies spread out, hands moving to their weapons. In the rocks, Sarah rose slightly, and Samuel could see her preparing to run. But there was nowhere to go now. The canyon walls rose steep and unforgiving on both sides, and desert stretched endlessly beyond. Samuel had maybe 3 seconds to decide. Turn Sarah in and live with the consequences, or stand against 3 armed lawmen for a woman who'd vanished from his life without explanation, a woman who might truly be the killer they claimed. The baby cried again, and Sarah's desperate eyes found his across the distance. Marshal Finch, Samuel said slowly, his hand still resting on his gun butt. I told you I haven't seen anybody. Now unless you've got cause to detain me, I'll be moving along. Finch's laugh was sharp as breaking glass. Oh, I've got cause. He shifted in his saddle, rifle barrel swinging lazily toward Samuel. See, we followed her tracks right to this creek, and they just disappeared, like maybe someone helped her cover them up. The youngest deputy, Tommy, had positioned himself to cut off Samuel's escape rope back up the ridge. The third man, silent until now, moved to flank the rocks where Sarah hid. They knew, had known all along, smart woman, that Sarah Webb, Finch continued conversationally, knew we'd track her here eventually, probably figured she'd need help. Lucky for her, she found the one man in this territory stupid enough to throw his life away for McKinnon blood. Samuel's mouth went dry. They were boxing him in with the practiced ease of men who'd done this before. Behind the rocks he caught a flash of movement. Sarah creeping toward the creek bed with her child clutched tight against her chest. Thing is, Finch said, I don't really care about you, Cross. You're small time, but that woman killed Judge Harrison's grandson, burned him alive in that church along with his wife. The judge is offering $1,000 for her head. Dead or alive, $1,000, enough money to set a man up for life out here. Samuel's mind raced, calculating distances, cover, the time it would take to draw and fire. 3 against 1 weren't good odds, but he'd faced worse. Then Sarah broke from cover. She ran toward the creek, splashing through the shallow water with the baby bouncing in her arms. The silent deputy wheeled his horse around, rifle coming up to his shoulder. There, Tommy shouted, pointing. Samuel drew. His first shot took the silent deputy clean off his horse before the man could fire. His second went wide as Finch's bullet burned across his shoulder, spinning him sideways. Tommy's shot shattered bark from the cottonwood behind him. Sarah stumbled, fell to her knees in the creek. The baby's cries rose sharp and desperate above the gunfire. She looked back at Samuel, her eyes wide with terror, and something else, gratitude, maybe, or apology. Finch levered another round, his face twisted with rage. Should have minded your own business, Cross. Samuel rolled behind a boulder as bullets chipped stone around him. His shoulder burned like fire, but his gun hand was steady. 2 shots left in the cylinder, 3 men still shooting. Through the chaos, he heard Sarah's voice, hoarse with desperation. Samuel, the baby, her words cut off in a scream. Samuel risked a look and felt his heart stop. Sarah knelt in the creek, blood spreading through the water around her. She still held the bundle, but her strength was failing. The baby's cries were getting weaker. Tommy emerged from behind his cover, rifle aimed at Sarah's head. Got her, Marshal. $1,000 just like you said. Finch stood in his stirrups, studying the scene with cold satisfaction. Finish it. Samuel had one choice left. He could stay hidden, let them kill Sarah, and probably walk away from this alive. Or he could stand up, knowing it meant his death, and maybe give her enough time to save her child. The baby cried again, thin and afraid. Samuel Cross stood up. Samuel's shot took Tommy in the chest, dropping him into the creek beside Sarah, but Finch's answering bullet caught Samuel in the side. doubling him over behind the boulder, blood soaked through his shirt, hot and sticky. "Sarah," he gasped, reloading with shaking hands. "The baby, she's alive," Sarah called back, her voice weak but determined. "Samuel, I never meant for this. I thought you were dead." He laughed bitterly, checking his remaining ammunition. 3 bullets left. "Funny, thought the same about you." Finch's voice echoed off the canyon walls, touching reunion. "But it ends now. Cross, you're bleeding out. Throw down your gun and I'll make it quick." Instead of answering, Samuel looked across the creek at Sarah. She sat waist deep in the water, one hand pressed against a wound in her side, the other cradling the bundle against her chest. Even from here he could see her strength failing. "Sarah," he said quietly, "5 years ago, what really happened?" She closed her eyes. "My father, he wasn't the man we thought. The banks, the robberies, it was all true, but I didn't know until it was too late." Her voice broke. "They came for us in the night, set fire to the house. I barely got out with my life. And your family, dead, all of them." Tears mixed with creek water on her face. "I've been running ever since, changed my name, tried to start over, met a good man, had Emma." She looked down at the bundle in her arms. "But they found me, always find me." Samuel's heart clenched. "The church fire, I was there when it started." "Yes, but I didn't." A coughing fit seized her, and blood flecked her lips. "Judge Harrison's grandson, he was part of it. The ones who killed my family. When he saw me in town he knew, came for me with his wife and 2 other men. And you fought back." "I had to, for Emma." She pressed her face against the baby's head. "The fire was an accident. A lantern got knocked over in the struggle. I tried to save them, Samuel. God help me, I tried." Finch's patience was wearing thin. "Enough talk. Cross, you've got 30 seconds before I come over there and finish this myself." Samuel knew they were both dying. His vision was starting to blur from blood loss, and Sarah looked ready to collapse. But the baby, Emma, she was innocent in all this. "Sarah," he said, making a decision that would haunt or redeem him, "there's a cave about 50 yards upstream, hidden behind the willows. You remember the place?" Her eyes widened. They'd hidden there together during summer storms, years ago when they were young and foolish and thought love could conquer anything. "Take Emma there. Wait for me." "Samuel, no, do it." His voice carried the authority of a man who'd made his peace with dying. "Whatever happens, you keep that baby safe. Promise me." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I promise." "Good." Samuel checked his gun one last time. "Sarah, yes, I never stopped loving you, not for one damn day." She sobbed then, clutching Emma tighter. "I know, me neither." Finch's bootfalls echoed closer. Time was up. Samuel took a deep breath, said a prayer for the woman he'd loved and lost and found again, and stepped out from behind the boulder to face whatever justice waited in the desert sun. Samuel Cross walked into the open like a man approaching his own funeral. Marshall Finch stood 20 yards away, rifle trained on his chest, confidence written across his weathered features. "Smart choice, Cross. Now where's the woman?" Instead of answering, Samuel raised his Colt. His hand was steady, despite the blood loss, despite knowing he was about to die. Behind him, he heard Sarah splashing quietly toward the willows, Emma's cries fading as they reached cover. "You want her," Samuel said. "Come and take her." Finch's rifle barked first, but Samuel was already moving, throwing himself sideways as the bullet whined past his ear. His return shot caught Finch in the shoulder, spinning the marshal around. The rifle clattered to the rocks. They faced each other across 15 yards of desert, 2 wounded men with everything to lose. "She's a killer, Cross," Finch snarled, drawing his subarm. "You're dying for nothing." "Maybe." Samuel cocked his hammer. "But I'm dying for something I believe in." "What about you, Marshall?" The question hung in the air between them. For just a moment, uncertainty flickered in Finch's eyes. That moment was enough. Samuel's bullet took Finch center mass, dropping the marshal to his knees. The man's gun fell from nerveless fingers as he toppled forward into the dust. Samuel staggered, his own strength finally failing. The desert spun around him as he collapsed beside the creek, his blood mixing with the water. But he'd done it. Sarah and Emma were safe. From the willows came the sound of careful footsteps. Sarah emerged pale and shaking but alive, Emma cradled in her arms. She knelt beside Samuel, tears falling onto his face. "You did it," she whispered. "They're gone." Samuel managed a weak smile. "The baby, is she perfect? Beautiful?" Sarah's voice broke. "Samuel, I'm so sorry, for everything, for letting you think I was dead, for..." "Hush." He reached up with tremendous effort to touch her face. "None of that matters now. You're alive. She's alive. Don't you die on me, Samuel Cross. Not after this." But they both knew he was fading. The blood loss was too much, the wounds too deep. Still, he'd kept his promise. Sarah and Emma would live. "There's money," he whispered, "in my cabin, under the floorboards by the stove. Take it. Start fresh somewhere far from here. Come with us." He shook his head slowly. "Can't, but I'll watch over you both, somehow." Sarah pressed Emma into his arms for just a moment, and Samuel looked down at the tiny face, red and wrinkled, and absolutely perfect. The baby's eyes opened, fixing on his with that ancient wisdom all newborns seem to possess. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "Your mama's brave, braver than anyone I ever knew." 10 years later, Emma Webb, now Emma Cross, after the man who'd saved her life, would stand at the edge of Devil's Creek with her mother, placing wildflowers where two heroes had bled out their last on a desert afternoon. Sarah would tell her daughter about the cowboy who'd loved them both enough to die for them, about the choice between safety and doing right, about how sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that matter most. The creek still ran clear and cold, washing away the sins of one generation, while nurturing the hopes of the next. And in the willows, where love had once bloomed young and wild, Emma would learn that the greatest stories aren't about those who survive, but about those who choose to sacrifice everything for something bigger than themselves. The desert remembered everything, but forgave those worth forgiving.